Welcome to the Wealthy Artist Podcast. And I'm your host, Sarah Clanton.
And I'm Wilson Harwood. And we're talking about how to develop your wealth,
enjoy financial freedom,
enjoy artistic freedom,
and live the life you've always imagined. Welcome to the Wealthy Artist Podcast.
Thanks. It's good to
be here. Yes. Yes, today on the show we have the lovely, the wonderful, very longtime friend of mine, Amber Gilormo in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome. Yay!
Ooh, hello, everybody.
Yes. So exciting. We're here on YouTube now, which is new. We are live streaming. So if you'd like to join us on the visual as well as the audio, you can do that. Hooray. This is so great. Well, we're excited to have you today, Amber, because you do something different. We haven't had anybody else like you on the show. And we are here to talk about something I think that is just so important for artists to understand that is definitely not something we're taught. But before we dive into that, I would love for people to get to know you a little bit. Amber, you're a very wonderful friend of mine. We've known each other since we're like 14 years old. We've played cello together. We've known each other a long time. We've done all the things, and it's so cool to see you just kicking ass now. I mean, you've always kicked ass. That's always been the case, but like just totally crushing it in all that you do and empowering others around you. So could you tell our audience what you do and a little bit about your journey?
Yeah. So I'm in Atlanta. Well, not really. Everybody says we're in Atlanta, but right now, currently I'm in Cumming, Georgia, but I have an office in Atlanta. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for 10 years in Georgia. And, you know, I started a personal injury law firm about 3.5 years ago now, I think. And I'd been practicing personal injury for, you know, the majority of the time I had been licensed. And as I, you know, became a business owner in the field, I started learning some valuable lessons that cost me a whole lot of money to learn the hard way. And it just kind of, you know, put me down a path to want to share that knowledge with other people who didn't have access to it, maybe didn't need to learn the hard way, because some lessons are not taught to people. You just figure it out as you go. A lot of that like business owner knowledge is not so easily shared, you know, because people don't want to give their competitions the leg up. They don't want to make it easy for other people to get into, you know, owning a business or doing their own thing, you know. And so what I set out to do I guess in 2020, the beginning of 2020, right before everything with the pandemic, I started another law firm that's geared towards kind of the business side of things. We do trademark for businesses, helping people turn, you know, ideas and businesses and startups into full brands that you can monetize on and, you know, create that kind of generational wealth that, you know, escapes most people. So we focus on trademarks, and I'm also building a contract shop. When I was talking about, you know, some of the hard lessons I've learned, some of the most money I've spent as a business owner has been paying other lawyers to do things for me, to write, you know, different kinds of agreements, to give me these ethical opinions that I needed. And we get their invoice and I'd be like, what? I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars for a letter or for an 8-page memo. And I'm thinking, damn, you know, I have the means, but I certainly don't want to spend that money on some of the basic things like an operating agreement, a separation agreement for a business, and those kinds of things that are just end up being very expensive if you need a custom contract. And sometimes you still need a custom contract, but I guess a way to prevent needing those high legal expenses is to start out making sure your business is protected through things like trademarks and contracts on the front end. We hear a lot about, you know, be proactive, not reactive. And that is technically the goal, I think, for my firm is to help people understand things that they wouldn't normally understand that they need to be protected against, and be proactive on the front of guarding your assets, being able to, you know, monetize long-term your the brand that you're building and make sure everything's protected. But that's in a nutshell where I'm at, what I'm doing. And something I found out a lot, funny, because when I was telling my current like operations manager, I'm like, a year ago, I want to start a trademark firm. She's like, well, don't we have like common law trademarks? Do you really need a trademark and all these different things? So I was realizing so many people don't know just the very basics about what protections you're afforded just by, using your business name or your name, and how can you, I guess, expand that protection. Off on a tangent here, but that's
no, it's great. Well, we talk about this it reminds me of copyright when we're talking about as musicians with copyright. Like people like, oh, well, isn't there just like if you mail yourself the lyrics, doesn't that work? Or, like there's these kind of sort of like old myths, old stories that are not true about like, oh, if it's out there, it's protected, because if I posted this one date about it, then that claims as, it's like, no, it's not exactly like that. So we talk about with song registration and other episodes, like the importance of, we've kind of only dipped our toe into like things like with copyright, but I think and we're so excited to talk to you about this today because it is something that we're not taught, and we're not taught how to be proactive instead of, reactive to like crises that happens, like someone maybe like copies your song and now you don't know what to do because you didn't do it right. But we're here to talk about trademarking your brand today. And I think I was telling Wilson before the show here that when it comes to branding, I think as artists, we tend to think of more, and we've had this conversation, Amber, before. That's what I was like, oh, you have to come on the podcast and talk about this. Because with artists, like in my mind, I realized my first reaction was aesthetic. What came to mind was brand. I was like, okay, what's my color palette and what pictures am I going to use? And okay, well, now I've got this cool thing I've spent all this time on, and I've made this beautiful thing and I'm putting out in the world, and someone else is copying it. Where's that line? That's not copyright, that's trademark. So yeah, how do, Wilson, what's your reaction when you think of branding?
Yeah. Well, when I think of trademarking, I think of the worst case scenario, which is like a cease and desist order, right? Or something that's, especially like when I look, I think we're both excited to learn a lot about this because I've always thought of trademarking. And I think this is a problem with most musicians is we're like, well, at what point are we big enough, making enough money, solidified enough to justify the costs of trademarking? And I think in traditional business world, Amber, you would be like, before you even begin, right? Like this is like a no-brainer.
That would be the advice, right? I mean,
that'd be the advice of the lawyer.
Proactive side. There's actually, everybody asks, where do you start, right? And so, I ask the same thing. I'm like, well, what do I do first? And usually you would consult with a lawyer if you can and afford it, because yes, it's not free. You do have to pay for it, but you consult with a lawyer to do this, to make sure that the name you're choosing to operate under and the brand that you're building is available, because although it may be available in Nashville, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's available in what's another city in Tennessee,
Smyrna.
Not really. I think that's in Georgia.
It is. No, there's one here too. It confuses me every time. I'm so glad you know that, Amber, because every time someone says that here, I'm like, wait, are you in Georgia or Tennessee?
If you're, if you started a band called, I don't know, Silver Fork, and
I love it.
Ooh, that's a good band name.
It's a good one.
And it's in Nashville, and you even like form an LLC called Silver Fork LLC. You go about building your business entity by filing for your LLC. Probably need to do your operating agreement and those things like that. And you're doing it all in Nashville. You do have common law rights to be Silver Fork in Nashville. And probably even a good surrounding radius where you've actually used that mark, like actually gone out and done business, played shows, gigged, whatever, in that area. But it doesn't even go so far as to protect you technically the common law right for the full state, unless you have done some business in the full state. And it certainly doesn't go beyond your state's borders. So you wouldn't have rights, for example, in Georgia or California or wherever, unless you maybe have played there regularly, but still it's only in the specific geographic location where you have done business or sold products or those kinds of things. And that's like your common law right kind of nut. And if you want to, expand ever, if you want to, go on tour or sell merch online or do things like that, you really need to make sure on the front end, we call it clear the mark is what the lawyer phrase is it, but it really just means, is your business name, brand, your idea, your slogan, is it available for you to use nationwide? Because then, as like Sarah, you're dealing with this now with your course, you want to make sure that whatever you develop it into, you're not infringing on somebody else's situation that's already out there, and that your idea is, unique and distinguishable. So people, when they're going to Google, they're going to end up on your page and not like your competitor's page with a similar name.
And that's a great thing I think that you just brought up too, is because sometimes I think artists it's hard for us to grasp. I think, okay, well, how does this protect me? But it's actually in another way also helping, like you said, it's going to help you actually be findable.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're actually going to, be more, we talk about metadata all the time and SEO and, it all plays together if it all is set up properly.
All of which I'm just learning about myself. Like, as I'm still, I would say, fairly young for a business owner. 3.5 years is not that long. I've learned a lot of lessons, but I'm still learning about like SEO, digital marketing, which I got on. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that word, but
you can say it.
We say whatever we want.
It's 2021.
Anyway, all of those things. And as part of that journey, you figure out these things and why they're important. So, like, for example, I was thinking to myself today, I was like, okay, as an artist, what would I want to know about trademark? Like, well, how would it benefit me? What can I trademark? What should I copyright? I think you've probably taught and had taught a little bit about copyrights. Like, you can copyright your lyrics, your music, anything in substantial written form. But can you copyright a song title or is it a trademark? I mean, you're shaking your head. No, that's the answer, right? You can't copyright a song title. You can't usually trademark a song title either. What you really need to focus on trademarking is the brand. So your band name, your LLC. Sometimes you can trademark an album, but you have to specifically develop that into a brand. So I want to use an example that I found super interesting. You may find interesting, it may be boring, but anyways, Red Hot Chili Peppers, right? They had their album Californication. I don't know the phrase. Platinum, whatever. Super successful. We've all heard it on the radio dozens of times. Like, everybody knows it. Fast forward a few years later, you have I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how old the album is, but it was several years later. You have Californication, a Showtime period that comes out, right?
Oh, shit.
Chili Peppers sued, I think it's Showtime.
Oh, wow.
For infringement. But they didn't actually have what I would consider a viable lawsuit because they never developed Californication into a full brand. It's just one album. So I don't even think they were awarded a trademark registration for it. I mean, granted it by the USPTO, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office, by the way. They are the ones who approve or deny and give out those trademarks, patents, and all the other good stuff. But anyways, what ultimately ended up happening is the case settled out of court. Sometimes we'll look at these things and we'll say, as lawyers, that it's going to cost you X amount, this amount of thousands of dollars for us to defend it. We might win, we'll probably win, but you're still going to have to pay us probably 20 grand, 30, 40 grand to defend you. Well, they're just going to pay that money over to the other side and say, we're done with it. Let's settle it out of court. And that's kind of what happened, but it kind of gives you an idea as to the cost that you could be looking at if you are on the infringing side, and also the cost of brand dilution if you're on the side that had the Red Hot Chili Peppers side with the Californication album, because that ultimately did become a huge part of their evolving brand, as musicians, as artists, as we put out, records and albums, we think about like, does this fit my brand for now? How does it reflect on what I've done in the past? How does my work evolve? And so we put, so much effort and thought into just building those songs and that, marketing it and all of those things. And if you don't think about the long-term aspect of your album or your band, or, by trademarking those items, then you could be, kind of infringed upon later. It could dilute your brand. It could, maybe they're piggybacking on your hundreds of thousands you put into your marketing budget. It's just, you want to make sure that you're protected in that aspect on both sides.
That's not going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm just thinking how the Red Hot Chili Peppers should have just been like exclusive sync licensing. You have to use our songs in your show. Like,
Right?
This is where we settle.
Yeah, we'll settle on that. They'll pay us so
Who
much money.
knows?
'Cause
It's
that
a
was a
confidential
successful
settlement.
show.
We don't know, you know?
we
Yeah,
had no
you're right.
idea.
I
We
actually
don't
never
know.
watched this show. I just read about this.
Oh, I did. It
I don't
was
think
dirty.
I can't believe I never thought about that. That's a great example.
Yeah, that is a great example.
And who would think like, oh, Californication, this is so original, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you never know.
And it's a great example too of like these bands, like if you're lucky enough to get to that level, I think there's several bands I can think of where like their brand is equivalent to some like major small businesses, like on level, like if we think of Radiohead, like their brand is, I can't think of them as being like one specific brand, like the Chili Peppers.
who is
I'm trying to think of people who like use specific colors and.
Oh, Amber, you would know is it JoJo? You gave me a little bow of like a mermaid bow
yeah,
from that
JoJo.
show. JoJo, I think she would be a great example of just like how the music and the brand is just like strung, like just strewn throughout. It's like just thread. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't
like
know who you're talking about, but like
raging
Beyonce
child
has
success.
a great
JoJo
brand.
Siwa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. There's a like I don't know. I think it's hard. I mean, I've learned the hard way so many times, and it would be so great for folks not to have to learn the hard way. And I think it kind of reflects sometimes on our self-worth if we're not willing to like sit and do these foundational things. Now, like we're kind of setting ourselves up for disaster if we don't, because we're not like even saying we're worth setting up. Like, what does that mean for like the rest of your business if you're not like, I'm not a real business, I'm not going to sign up for LLC, I'm not going to trademark stuff, but I'm going to go out there and pretend like I've got all my shit together, which, you know, fake it till you make it, I guess. We all learn all this stuff, you know, but I think if you can really just set yourself up, not only are you safe business wise, but like you're actually just like empowering yourself to like really have it together so that you can be available for that success to happen. So
Right.
you can think about other stuff instead of like, oh, am I trademarked? Oh no, like is someone going to screw me over? So yeah, if you're just getting started and you're listening to this, you know, now is the perfect time to think about trademarking, you know, what you're doing. It is never, I don't think, too early to start, you know, like we pointed out in the beginning.
The types of things you could look at trademarking, they would be things like your business name, your band name, your tagline, your slogan, even trademark is specifically for a good or service, right? So you can think about anything that would personify your brand on the road. Even you can think about there's two different kinds of trademark applications. There's an intent to use and an in use. So, you know, if you have this great idea, like I'm sure Nike had at one point before they got all their trademark portfolio together about the phrase Nike, right? And they were like, we're going to use this. We're starting the groundwork now. We plan to use it in commerce in a year. Go ahead and file, 6 months. Go ahead and file your intent to use application that you can convert to an in use. So even if it's just like a idea in the back of your mind, if you're serious about it, you know, and that's what you're going to do, trademark it because you can always convert it. Because when you trademark something, you do have to show that your mark is in use for it to be a live mark, for you to be granted those rights by the USPTO. What I mean by that is, like, for example, if you're trademarking a band name, you'd probably need to show a sample of your work. And that would be something with your application. It'd be something like if you have a CD or an album, you do your album cover that shows your band name, or maybe your website, you know, a clip, an actual like screenshot of it that would show, you know, that you're using that name in commerce or on the internet, selling in the store in some way like that. I mean, there's different classes too, you know, that you actually get to get a mark in. So, you know, we would get, for example, you know, if you're going to get a trademark for a band and you're performing music, you'd go in one class. If you're going to get a trademark for your band name, but you're teaching a course under that band name, it'd be a whole separate class, which is a whole separate application. So, you know, the government, yes, they do kind of nickel and dime us. They make us pay again for a whole nother application in that other class, or an additional class, so to speak. So, you know, but they do look at to see exactly what you are doing with your brand. Are you just playing shows? Are you teaching courses? Are you, an instructor, musical instructor? They look at all of those things, and there's probably 3 different classes for each of those.
That's why it's great to have someone like you who can help us get through this process. And you're helping me renew. I don't think that's right. Where my trademark.
It's actually a new application because you let it die.
I let it die. Let it die. I let it die. What's interesting is I kind of had forgotten about this whole trademark thing, and I had actually trademarked my business name.
Yeah.
Right as I got out of college. I don't know how I had this foresight to do it. And then I think I assumed that it just was always the thing. So,
interesting.
I didn't know I even let it die till we were having a discussion a couple months ago, Amber. And I was like, oh, well, shit. Well, let's do this. So Amber's helping me get my shit together. And
and she should help you get your shit
together.
together.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about, getting a lawyer is a great idea. And for those of you listening, there is a resource called the VPLA, which does offer, I don't think you have to be in Nashville, but they do offer
they're great
free lawyer advice to those in the music industry. So,
well, they connect you with a lawyer.
Yeah,
who will do
they're
it
actually,
pro bono.
I believe they're linked on the USPTO.gov. I believe they're linked on there. Volunteer, what is it?
Volunteer Lawyers Professionals.
Yeah.
VPLA.
Yeah.
VPLA. Yeah, VPLA. There we go.
So whoever's signed up with them, they just refer them out. I mean, the thing with those is you don't actually know the quality of the person that you're hiring, so with any service, if you have to go, whether it's you're looking for your bookkeeper, your CPA, your lawyer, with any kind of professional service,
absolutely.
Something I've had to learn, and Sarah and Wilson, I'm sure you learned it too. It's you got to look for somebody who you can jive with, who definitely talk to, and that you understand the things that they're saying. For me, that's difficult on the CPA side of things, because I am not a numbers person. I don't, I do numbers for my personal injury clients, but when I'm thinking about these, tax loopholes here, or this or that, or all the 401k stuff, I'm just my eyes glaze over. I don't really, I don't really care. I should, but it's just not something that's moves me. I don't really get it. So I really need my bookkeeper and my CPA.
Absolutely.
For them to break it down for me. And I think the same thing is true. When you're looking for legal counsel, or when you're looking for, somebody to help you figure out how to build your brand, that they can break it down, for you, and just really kind of guide you on a common sense path, because you don't want somebody to tell you, okay, well, you need to pay me $2,000 now to trademark your name, if it's not available for you. So usually what will happen as a lawyer, now at least I do, and I know several other trademark lawyers do this, we'll say, okay, well, this is, we have flat fees for things. We'll say, you can pay for a trademark search. We'll do it for you. We'll give you our opinion as to whether or not your name would even be trademarkable. And if we think it is, we'll give you our best opinion. We'll file the application for you. And then, you can kind of add on those flat fees. There'll be different packages that you can look at that just sort of very common sense stuff, because you don't want to get into it. And then you don't want to feel like somebody's just taking you for your money, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely.
Make sure that they're explaining it to you.
Yeah. I'll say one thing, having gone through the VPLA, I had a good experience with my co-writer, but I think the main thing is it's slow. If you want things to happen, if you want someone working hard for you, just the time it took from the moment we contacted them to the moment we sat down with a lawyer, it might have even been 2 months.
Yeah, totally.
It was in a lot of follow-up emails. You get what you pay for. If it's free. Yeah. The lawyer was good, I thought.
I ended up meeting someone who I ended up hiring later.
That's what we did too. Yeah. So
but,
I think that's the
totally.
So it's a free way to try people out, I think is
but
how
to our point, we got it, we're worth it. Hire Amber and let her help you.
Yeah. I think we're saying don't be afraid of the money thing. Don't be afraid of the free thing.
Yeah.
It's worth it to spend. It is around $2,000, right? Ballparking.
Yeah. What does that look like? And how long does your trademark last? That's what I meant to ask.
Your trademark can last for as long as you keep it live. So your trademark can last indefinitely. I think it's the 5th or 6th year you have to start filing your maintenance forms, and you have to renew it. So for example, if you go to USPTO.gov, and you type in, you go to their test search system and you look for Radiohead, just using an example here we just talked about, they're going to have several marks, all for Radiohead. And you'll see, if you click on the different ones, you'll see at some point it says renewed at the bottom. So, they've had the mark for years and years, just as needed, as prompted by the USPTO, that you'll need to file your maintenance forms proving that you're still using the mark. So as long as you're using the mark for, it's yours. If you if you go bankrupt and all your things are gone and you're like, screw this, I'm going to be a teacher, or I'm going to, I don't know, be a sailor, and you're not doing music anymore, then, you're going to abandon your mark and somebody else can use it, but for as long as you're using it, you have it.
Cool.
Interesting. Cool.
Maintenance.
So Sarah, you just didn't see the email that was like, renew your mark.
Who knows where that went into my spam box?
I was wondering that, because it could have gone to spam. It could have been like one of those letters that went to like an old address and never got forwarded to you,
That's actually totally possible. I've moved so many times. Because you'd think I'd see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just kidding with you. I would have done the same thing. It's hard to keep on top of those things.
It's like, oh, this looks like crap. Yeah. And I will say that I may not have gotten something, or maybe I did, but it was, I think I did it through like LegalZoom.
No.
And that was 20. How old are you when you graduated college?
You know what?
22.
Like, a lot of people use LegalZoom.
But I had no idea, so I might not have gotten a notice.
Yeah. The thing, like, you're figuring out here, and, when you look to see, is my mark still there? Oh my God, I trademarked it. And you're like, wait, what happened? And they don't tell you those things, with
right.
They just take your $349 or whatever they're charging these days, like for the application, and they take it, they file it. But then if the USPTO comes back and issues what we call an office action, which means that there's something wrong, we need you to explain this or clarify this, they're not going to handle that for you. Then you're going to have to go out and get an actual lawyer or handle it yourself and hope that you're doing everything correctly. But so, those services are just like kind of, I would say, General Mills. Like, LegalZoom hires a law firm to do their own trademarks, if that gives you a kind of idea of
right.
So they don't do it in-house. If you go and you look up LegalZoom on the USPTO.gov, you can see who filed their trademark. It wasn't them. So
I like that. It's a mic drop right there.
I know.
Can we get the sound of a mic drop? I like it.
But I was thinking too more about like, Sarah, you were talking about your course, and have you thought more about the direction you're heading with your course name? Have you thought about how you're gonna, continue to brand that? I was wondering, like, from an artist perspective, like, how do you go about from like your Cello Tree Arts, your business? How are you thinking to? This is for my edification, because I'm like, how do I reach artists?
I love this.
How are you thinking about, evolving your course, like from a name perspective?
Well, this is a great question, because I've been thinking about it. It has been one thing, and I did release it in like a beta test as one thing, but now that I'm releasing it as an evolved thing or the ever evolving thing, I'm kind of wondering how to brand it with my business name. So, I'm like, okay, do I just keep it Total Song Registration Workshop? Or do I make it Cello Tree Arts Total Song Registration Workshop? Now that's a huge mouthful. I'm not going to make it that, but I guess my question here maybe is, if I wanted to say, Cello Tree Arts presents how to register your shit, like if I wanted to tie my already business name into the course name, is that advisable? Or is that a good idea? Does that help you brand the course name? I think
that's a really cool idea, because then, you don't necessarily, it's bad business here on my end, but you don't necessarily, if you trademark Cello Tree Arts, do you really have to trademark the other name too? You could, you probably should, but I think you'd still have a strong claim for your trademark if your trademarked name is in the expanded one. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So if you take Cello Tree Arts, it's trademarked. You upgrade your little TM to a R, circle R.
I was going to ask about that.
Registered. Ooh. You're official. So when you do that, you can just stick that, like Cello Tree Arts presents, which is Total Song Registration Workshop. Cello Tree Arts presents Total Brand Building Workshop, whatever it may be, right?
Right.
You can just like keep modifying that, but it still contains a trademarked, just nobody's going to rip you off like that, although they might steal the last half. But, you
right.
think of it like that. Is that a way to save some money while you're testing it, while you're in the beta test phase to see if that course is successful? Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
We're solving problems here today.
Yeah, that's great. I'm realizing I'm screwed though, because I got So
Wilson's also building a course.
Well, I'm listening to this conversation, but like my legal side is probably totally like most of you guys listening. But I created a separate company rather than using my studio's brand, because I actually went through the same problem as you, Sarah. I was like, man, what do I put this course under? So just as a background, I'm created this course that's teaching people how to turn a room in their house into a home studio, essentially. And I created a separate company called Soundproof Your Studio, which is the brand. But my studio for production that we're in right now is called Elevated Music, which is also probably not trademark. And that's a common enough name that I could imagine that a bunch of people have it and they might sue me one day. So we'll see. I'm like, oh shoot.
We're going to have to delay the release of this episode until I figure some shit out.
I got to figure all these things out. But this is, I guess what I'm saying is that this is an example where I probably would want to trademark Soundproof Your Studio.
Yeah.
And I would want to trademark Elevated Music separately.
Well, at least I think.
Okay.
And trademark my name.
I know, yeah. Let's hear from the expert.
I know, this is all crazy. So that's 3 trademarks.
Right? So
$6,000.
Okay. So I think we should say something too here. If a person, for example, wants to trademark their name, like Sarah Clanton, you have to do a search all around the US to figure out, does anybody else have your name? And if they do, don't even bother filing your application until you reach that person and get a consent agreement from them that you can be that name. So if there is somebody out there with Elevated Music, you should most likely go to them. Well, we need to figure out, what are they doing with Elevated Music? Is it for like a hearing aid? Is it for, something totally unrelated to what you're doing? And if that's the case, you can have 2 brands with the same names in different classes. It falls on, is there a likelihood of consumer confusion? Would the average consumer be able to distinguish the 2 brands? I think so, if they're doing 2 totally separate things, right? So, maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not. That's kind of where a trademark lawyer comes in, because we would do a search for you and give you an opinion as to whether or not, you're going to have problems. So, the other thing to keep in mind when you're building brands is, what's cool about Sarah's business name is that it's like a made up word, right? Because the Cello Tree Arts it's
made up.
Not a word.
I made it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like how Spanx, the big underwear brand, is a made up word because it's got the X in it. It's more unique. So things like that are made up are going to be easily trademarked. So, but for you, for example, and for me, we're using, because I'm going by, the boutique lawyer here, myself over. I don't know why I didn't think about this. I do know why. It's because I'm new to trying to use social media as a platform to reach people. And I had no idea about what handles to pick. I just don't even know sometimes what I'm doing on that side of this.
We're all with you on that.
But my point is that when you're using common words like Elevated Music, Soundproof, Studio, those are descriptive words. Those are common everyday words. They are going to be harder to trademark. It's not impossible. Basically, the mark isn't going to be as strong as it could be if it was a made up word. And what I mean by that is, when we're trying to trademark a descriptive term like Elevated Music, we have to usually specifically disclaim a word in that, saying like music, for example. I don't know this is exactly how I would do it, but just throwing this out there. So what we do in a trademark application is we say, okay, we are trying to trademark Elevated Music as, a business in this class. So maybe music production or whatever, in music production. And in the fine print, lawyers love fine print. We're claiming rights to, Elevated, disclaiming any rights to music except for in this combination. So it gets really convoluted, but what that does is it does give, kind of like the door open there for other people to come in and say, okay, well, my business is called Elevated Stairs. I mean, just using an example, you may not have to do it. Usually I would say, we'd only go down that road if somebody already had a very similar mark or other things like that. Or if a search turns up lots of hits under that like word combination that could be confusingly similar. So that's kind of like the thing with LegalZoom and those types of services too is Sarah got lucky, I think, because she has a made up name, with her business. But those types of services, they don't walk you through that. They just get your application filed. But yeah, exactly. So you don't know if you're infringing on somebody else's mark that's out there that maybe is common law or maybe it's something else. I mean, and you don't know what kind of shit you could be stepping in, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I have another question because I'm thinking in my head, like musicians don't know trademarks. They're not probably as savvy as like the traditional business entrepreneur whose goal is to start a multi-million-dollar company. And so they're probably like most of us like, oh, I don't want to pay for a trademark. I'm not going to do it. So could you, as a savvier entrepreneur, come in, trademark something that's more standard, like elevated music, and then down the road, if you were feeling mean, actually serve some cease and desist orders to competitors or people because you trademarked it ahead of them? Is this do I am a terrible person?
No, lots of people have done that, right? With like,
it doesn't sound out of the realm of happening.
I just think of like, in reality,
it doesn't really work like that. I mean, look, okay, yes. One of the reasons.
Why not just pay for it?
Yeah, no. One of the reasons why you trademark stuff is so you can build a portfolio, right? Like, so you can become a mogul. So you can have this really kind of
the Wealthy Mogul podcast.
Yeah. So it solidifies your business's like legitimacy. It just kind of you're legit, right? So people go to your site like, hey, they've put some money into this brand. They're not just some, guy in a garage doing shit. He's like, actually, he's got a real business. I mean, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
You built a garage. It's not a garage.
This is not a garage. This is way nicer than a garage.
It is it's a studio. That's not what I meant. I was using an example.
I know. He was doing that to himself.
We're just messing. Yeah, I'm doing it to myself.
Okay.
We let him have one kombucha before the show, and he's acting
crazy. Yeah, we're drinking kombucha, by the way. It's not beer.
He's done. I'm done. I mean, I'm done. He's not. Anyway, we're never really taught to learn this stuff. And we keep kind of coming back to that. And I'm so glad that we're learning about this now. And it is like so much information. And that is why we need help. And so thank you so much for just like kind of just starting to scratch the surface. If our listeners want to know more about where to find you, how they can hire you, talk to you, just check you out on Instagram. Where can they find you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Okay. So I'm currently on Instagram at the boutique lawyer, all spelled out like normal people. And just send me a DM. I have another page, but for my personal injury law firm. But my what do you call it? Trademark firm, the boutique lawyer. I have now decided I may be rebranding myself. I don't know. Nice. I just literally spent thousands of dollars branding. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. You go down these roads and like you were saying, Sarah, you get so into the colors and the fonts.
Yeah. We do this though. We evolve. We have to rebrand.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love the way this looks. I love this vibe. But maybe the boutique lawyer needs to be my slogan and my firm name could be something else. I have to you really should think about those things before you get into it. But as this is a thing I think a lot of people run into, we're searching for what domain names are available, what handles are available. And sometimes we pick our names based on that. Like, how can we reach other people? Right. What names are out there? Because platforms like Instagram and Facebook and we got Clubhouse now and TikTok. I mean, some Clubhouse is relatively new, but the others are very saturated.
I know. I'm just getting onto it, actually. Just getting onto the Clubhouse. Actually, Amber, you were the first person to tell me about it. And since a couple other people have told me. But I mean, I think I totally forgot where my brain was going to go about. You just had something so brilliant. Keep going. Everything you say is brilliant.
I was saying is we go as just like regular people trying to figure out how to form a business, how to reach people with our message. how do we get there? We look to see like what's available. And I'm like trying to play with words. What's my vibe here? What words do I like together? And your handle doesn't necessarily have like your handle. Is that the right phrase, Sarah? You're better with social media than I am. So
I know that's totally right. Okay. I mean, actually, I think you're right. Like the name is really important. I think that's a big part of, we only have like, nanoseconds to capture somebody.
Right.
So taking that time to think about the name, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's important. But it doesn't have to be like dispositive. It doesn't have to be it, that your handle could be one thing as long as it vibes with I'm not a brand.
No, I get that.
Person,
totally get that.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So long story short, I was thinking that maybe my firm name could be the Boutique Lawyer. See, Georgia, we just legalized trade names for lawyers. Like before, we always had to have our surname in the firm name, but we just did it this year.
Wow.
And so, other states, I think it's like, maybe is it Florida? It's like trade names have been legal there for years and years. And it's like the Wild West. You can see there'll be like, I was trying to think of it. I just saw a hilarious personal injury lawyer name there. It was like the Pit Bull or something like that. But that's like the actual firm name.
Yeah. Wow.
That's so much better though, because lawyers are always the billboard on the side of the road. It's some old white guy that's just like, were you injured in a car accident?
Yeah.
Contact like Michael J. Fox this. And you're like, I'll never remember that.
But yeah,
and like
I'm going to
remember the Pit Bull.
Yeah, I remember the Pit Bull.
I'm going to hire the Pit Bull.
I'm going to remember the Boutique Lawyer. Yeah. Like, I love it. I think it's great. But yeah, it's totally about, I totally think there's so much here.
Well, we can talk forever. The problem I run into in my industry is that a boutique law firm is an actual thing. It's a descriptor to somebody being like a smaller practice. Usually it's a small size law firm that offers like very personal client service. And is like niched in their practice areas. Like maybe they just do criminal defense or they just do family law. You can call yourself a boutique law firm. So that's a descriptive term. Kind of when I'm going back to elevated music, it's not necessarily descriptive because it is, somewhat unique. You don't usually use that phrase in common, like when you're commonly describing music. It's not a normal phrase.
This music is so elevated.
Boutique lawyer is technically a normal phrase that you use to describe that type of a law firm or a lawyer. So I don't think I can actually trademark that, And so as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, damn, why did I do that? I mean, I really like the vibe. Maybe I can just keep it as my handle, but should I, change my law firm name? And I am going to, but I'm just, those are the things you learn as like a business owner, as anybody trying to like make it or, figure out how do you get your brand off the ground, your business off the ground. Those are the types of things you need to watch out for and look for.
And so good to do it earlier than later. It's great that you're figuring this out now, not too deep in, because imagine if you do just like build out and then you do get that cease and desist and like, oh, it sucks to like put all the energy into it.
And it like desist from every firm within 5,000 miles.
Oh my God. Like, and this stuff happens anyway, like all the time, like even when we do our best. So like, not that you shouldn't do it. I mean, you should do it. It's why, it's just, I think it's not waste. It's an investment in ourselves. Like I have also spent thousands of dollars and I'm like, oh, I didn't need to spend it there. I should have done it there, but I wouldn't have learned about where I needed to spend it if I hadn't have done that stupid thing. So, we live and we learn, and that's why we're here on the Wealthy Artist Podcast to talk it through. And you aren't alone out there. Don't worry. Like we're all learning this together. So awesome. Amber, you're so great.
Old people like me who don't know social media as well as we should. I just, you learn, like, these are the types of things you learn the hard way. But I mean, you compound that on the business side, on like the branding side, on the contract side, which we're not really talking about today, but you can really screw yourself over if you don't think about those things on the front end. If you like end up in just the hot mess, legal messes are no fun. Nope. And even if the legal mess doesn't cost you money, like thousands of dollars, like it very well could, it's just stressful. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it is so overwhelmingly like anxiety fueling. It's terrible. Like so most of the time I don't even like being a lawyer. I'll be honest with you. I like helping people, but there's a big part of my job that like I really have to close the door on at the end of the day. Like on the legal side, when those things start going wrong, it is just like it's a drowning type feeling. So in order to avoid that like situation, you want to make sure that you're looking into the best way to protect yourself. I mean, really think of it like that. A lot of people think like, oh, I should go talk to a lawyer about this, or I should do that, but shoulds usually don't materialize. You really just have to take that out and turn it into a like, I need to, or I am going to, because then you'll do it, or like I have to.
Yeah, totally. That switching that talk around it is super important. Making it like instead of I want to do it, I am doing it.
Yes.
Totally. Oh my gosh, Amber, you're so great. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wealthy Artist Podcast. Oh my gosh, go check her out at the Boutique Lawyer. Follow her, so like when she does change her handle, you're there for it.
The handle might stay. Look, okay.
Yeah, that's right. You never know. But we'll put all of Amber's information that you need to know in the episode resource guide here. Wilson, would you?
Yes. Yeah, definitely check her out. This is an amazing experience and something I don't usually talk about trademarks ever. So this is awesome to learn about. Thank you so much, Amber, for coming on the show
free
today.
Legal advice. I'll send you my bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. This was the most costly podcast episode yet.
So far. Oh my gosh, so great.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next week on Monday, same time, same place. Our YouTube is coming. We're getting it together, but you will see us in the flesh pretty soon. And how awesome we look on the YouTube.
Especially when I do this.
Yeah. You don't even know what she's doing. She's doing something amazing.
But you'll know soon.
All right. We'll see y'all later. Bye.